Hello and welcome to our first webinar in our The Woman series. Today's webinar is financial goal setting. This webinar will run for approximately an hour and contains general advice. Taking time to ask yourself the big questions can be daunting and empowering at the same time. What we'll cover today in our webinar is, do you have financial goals? Where do you want to go? What do you want to achieve? Setting timeframes for those goals, how to price out your goals, and following the SMART methodology of goals. So today you'll be receiving award-winning information from Shannon Smit, financial advisor and winner of Women in Finance Financial Advisor of the Year 2021 and IFA Goals Based Adviser of the Year 2021. My name is Bianca and I'm a paraplanner at Smart Business Solutions Financial Planning, and I'll be your moderator today. We do have time for questions at the end of this session, so please submit your questions through in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will read those at the end, towards the end of our session. You should automatically be placed on mute for this webinar. If you are not, if you could please place yourself on mute, that would be great. And to introduce our team, we have paraplanners, client service managers, mortgage brokers, administration, and client services coordinator, all on our financial planning team. So these are the faces behind the names when you call us and speak to us over the phone. And just to give you some introduction, a lot of you would have already met Shannon. But if you haven't, Shannon is the founder and managing director of Smart Business Solutions and Smart Financial Planning. Shannon is a qualified accountant and financial advisor, so very smart lady. Shannon has been advising small and large businesses for over 25 years, and prior to founding Smart Business Solutions, just about 15 years ago, worked for one of the world's leading accounting firms in Melbourne, Prague, Amsterdam, and New York. Shannon is an expert in goals-based financial advice, self-managed super funds, and retirement planning. And just to go to our general advice, important information. So this presentation does contain general advice, so it doesn't take into account any of your individual finances or objectives. So you should consider talking to a financial advisor before making any financial decisions based upon this presentation. So thank you and welcome.
Right. Thanks very much, Bianca, and welcome everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time out today to join us and go through and see how we can help you get focused on your actual financial goals. And we have the Women's series. We're going to go through a few different aspects in each of the different webinars that we're going to host. All of these, the whole series has actually been built around what people have been saying to me, what clients have been saying, oh, this has been fantastic, this information I've gained, or I wish I knew this earlier, or I really want to learn a bit more about these different areas. So that has been kind of the focus point for me and what drove me to actually put together this Women's series. So really going back to what are your goals? And often when I talk about what are your goals, we all go back to when we're at work and, you know, your boss used to say, so what are your goals? And at that point, you know, often people are rolling the eyes. I don't know what my goals are, but we have those goals and that structure often in the workplace. We might be identifying, maybe we do have some of these career goals, but on a personal level, when was the last time that you potentially considered your financial future or considered your financial aspects, but also considered your goals on those aspects, so what your financial goals are and also potentially some of your personal goals. So what I want to focus on today is how do we look at identifying what those goals are and aligning those to how we're going to implement that from a financial perspective in life and going forward, but also just to help you trigger and find those. As Bianca said, I was the winner of the Goals Based Adviser. I'm very passionate about working with clients to focus on your goals. At the end of the day, we all need to enjoy life, but also, keep an eye on things in the future. So I'll get started then in going through looking at goals, but it's interesting that research suggests that without proper guidance, individuals often fail to identify as many as half of their goals that they then later recognize to be central to their plan. And so what my hope from today is, that I inspire you to actually start to think about some of those goals, identify what they might be, even work on them over a short period of time to start trying to putting some of those in place. But these are what the research is actually telling us. I do actually find a lot of my clients tend to overachieve. I feel they overachieve because we actually put the goals out there, and whether it's you gravitate towards those goals or you actually start to have those plans in place. But I always see that I find so many of my clients become really overachievers when we're putting those goals out. So when we're looking at those financial goals and looking at the different aspects that could be, we're talking about what could be personal goals, what could be even related to business, what could be travel goals, it might be that you want to buy a house, it might be that you want to do that big holiday, it might be that you want to leave your job and start up that next business, and what would that look like if you were to go through some of those. So a lot of those kind of, I guess I call some of those common goals, you might have some of those, but not be sure on how you're going to go about it. And often I think that I find when we're going through some of those common goals, there's an expectation, or I guess we kind of have this expectation on ourselves that we will be continually striving towards some of those goals. Of course, we want to have that holiday, but without actually having some framework and specifics around that, all of a sudden, and many of us have felt that over the last few years with COVID, that a lot of our goals in theory have been put on hold for a period of time through no fault of your own. But now's the opportunity to really say, well, let's see what we can do and try and get some of those in place, have a brainstorm as to what are those personal goals. And I often say with goals, and even when I'm chatting with our team, is, we all think of that friend that we've got. We've all got that great friend that we haven't spoken to for a good 12 months. We can go for 12 months without speaking to them. We catch up with them, and it's like we've never had a pause in our discussions. What do you want to be able to say to them that you've achieved on a personal level, and also on a, and maybe you're not talking all the finances with them, but on a personal level, what would you want to be able to discuss with them and say, when they say, how was your year last year? And you can actually come back with some of the goals that you've actually achieved in that year, and looking at those from to get that plan out there in the framework. So when I actually look at financial goals, how does that all interlink? I like to call it, I guess, I often call it buckets, but let's face it, they're kind of teacups. But I often like to say you have 3 buckets in life. And the reason for that when I'm talking about financial is we have our income generating bucket in the middle. That can be either your business or it could be your employment income, but that's the income generating bucket that needs to be the feeder to what I call your other buckets in financial world. I look at the today bucket. Now, the today bucket is paying off your house or buying a house, and you've got your mortgage. It could be if you've got children, it could be getting them through schooling. It could be holidays. These are all of your today, making sure you enjoy life and get through life. But you've also got the tomorrow bucket. Now, the tomorrow bucket can be, I say, inside of super or outside of super. The inside of super, meaning that you actually are putting away for tomorrow for a long time in the future, but you're putting away for tomorrow. You can't access it until that point in time. And then you might have the outside of super, which may be an investment that you're looking at, that you're putting aside for an investment, but you actually are intending on being able to access that before retirement, because it's outside of super. But really trying to focus on those 3 buckets. And when it's important to note that there is no one size fits all when it comes to where should you be directing your attention when it comes to the 3 buckets. I often see that we are having our income generating bucket. We want to focus on making sure that we have the ability to earn the income. Some of that income generating bucket may actually be as a consequence of the tomorrow bucket, because you've invested and now we've got actually more income generating that may enable us to invest more into the tomorrow bucket as well. But trying to have a look at it from those 3 buckets, in that we want to be enjoying life today, and that comes to goals of what you have in enjoying life today, that holiday goal, that renovating the house, the swimming pool, the caravan, those types of things. But we also want to make sure that we are, from a financial perspective, thinking about tomorrow as well. I don't want you to be only thinking about tomorrow, building up your super and not enjoying today. So there's a balancing act that needs to be done when we're going through that kind of aspect as well, because we need to enjoy today. We don't want to enjoy today too much. Now, I've had many times where we have had clients that have come in and said, oh, I'm 59. I want to retire at 60. I've got $1 million of debt and I've got 200 in super. That presents a nice big challenge for me, but I'm always up for the challenge. But we also don't want a situation where you come to me and say, I've got all of this money in super. I've never had a holiday. I'm 59. And, and now I want to have those holidays, but you've had that period in the middle where you haven't been able to enjoy it. So it is about actually balancing within those three buckets. I can speak of some examples that I have done with different clients. We might have set up, say, a self-managed super fund. So a super fund just for the clients. They may have purchased a commercial property in that self-managed super fund. They might be mid-30s, and we will say, well, that's the tomorrow bucket. Okay, let's tick that one for a while. We've set ourselves up. Let's focus a bit more on the today bucket. Let's get more of the mortgage paid off. Let's get those young kids off to Disneyland at some point and enjoying life, and financially modeling how all of that looks. So it is a balancing up between whether you're looking at today or whether you're looking at tomorrow, but making sure at all times you've got goals in mind so that you can keep striving towards those goals. So when I talk about balancing act, it's not only a balancing act between where you're investing your money or spending your money between today and tomorrow. It's also about the balancing act of the implications of what you're going to do with those with that money. And I say the balancing act is there will be some things that are great tax outcomes. They create great tax outcomes. Maybe it's an investment property, great tax outcome. Maybe it's a great financial outcome. Maybe it's an investment that someone is undertaking. And then you've got also then the personal goals. Now, there can be some things, and this is why I'm really passionate about the goals-based advice. I love my numbers, and I'm always putting numbers behind everything that I'm looking at doing so that I can give enough information that clients then can make an informed decision on it. But this is where the goals part comes in. If I use an example, I had a client recently that said, look, we really want to buy a caravan, and it's $50,000. That's a lot of money. We do have that money sitting in our home loan offset account, but we just feel taking $50,000 for that caravan, we had a goal, and I've been working with this client been more than 6-7 years now, and they had a goal from back then, and we had a plan, a really clear plan how we were going to get their home loan paid off. And they're going to have their home loan at that time. They'll have their home loan paid off within 5 years, which was going to be really exciting. I always believe once you've got your home loan paid off in Australia, life's pretty good once you've got that mortgage gone. So that was the plan. But they said, oh, look, we've got young primary school age kids. We're thinking of buying this caravan, but we actually just can't stomach the idea of taking 50 grand off that home loan offset. We so badly want to pay off our home loan. So I said to them, look, leave it with me. Let me crunch some of the numbers and then come back to you. So I came back to them and I said, look, is buying the caravan a great tax outcome? Actually, it doesn't give you any tax benefit at all. There's no kind of tax implications. Is it a great financial outcome? Well, actually, 5 years ago, I'd probably say, well, you buy a caravan, and it actually was. Caravans were going up in value a lot. People were selling them for more than they paid for them. That's not the case now. So it's not the greatest financial outcome. You're not investing in a caravan to make money in the caravan. Financially, you're going to pay a bit more on your home loan because you're going to take that money off your offset. So it may not be the best financial outcome because you're now going to be paying a bit more off your home loan. I did then calculate that for them, but it is going to satisfy your personal goal. And you've got young primary school age children. You really want to do some travel, and having that caravan would really enable you to do that. Now, I actually financially modeled that out and said, what if I told you it was going to take you 7 years to pay off your home loan now instead of 5 years? How many years of happiness and travel and all of that time with your young primary school age kids are you going to get if you buy that caravan? So anyway, they bought the caravan the next day, as you could imagine. And that's where it comes down to balancing and being able to make a really informed decision and coming back to your goals of, not always is it the best tax outcome? Is it the best financial outcome? But it's actually making sure you focus on your goals and going back to that balancing act. Sure, not a great financial outcome. You have another 2 years now of your home loan to pay. They balance that with, we're going to get 6 to 10 years of family holidays in this caravan with the family. So it is about a balancing act. And that's why what I love about looking at your goals and linking your personal goals with financial aspects as well is being able to be in a position of financially modeling some of that out and working out what does that really mean and what can I do and what is the cost of doing that. So the cost to this client, it was an extra 2 years of mortgage, not an extra 2 years of mortgage payments in a sense, and knowing that they still have that, but this long-term benefit that was coming through. So it's really important with what you're doing is to kind of think of it holistically as well. So always going back to what your goals are. Overall, so always going back to what are your goals, making sure that you are being able to live, and when I say then not living too much, that you actually have no money for the tomorrow buckets, always thinking of the today bucket, the tomorrow bucket, and how am I making the money? Because often with our goals, we might be looking in our business, how do we grow the business, how do we get more income? But once we have that income, it's really important to then actually consider what is that next stage that we're looking at then as well. So when I actually then look to going to the goals and looking at the 5 SMART steps, I love the fact that they call this the SMART steps because it aligns beautifully with our business being Smart Business Solutions. Our acronym does not go for the same ones, but looking at it, and many of you may have done this in your business, you may have done this in your employment, but it is really worth looking at it from a personal perspective. What is the specific goal that we actually have? Is it that home renovation? Is it that holiday? What is it? And make sure that it's something that you can actually go, what do I want to accomplish? Why is it important? Why is that goal important to me? Why is it important that I bought that caravan so that I have young primary school age children that get to enjoy it for all of those holidays? What's involved, who's involved, where, what are all the frameworks? So you've got to be really specific about it instead of just doing goals, which are a bit like New Year's resolutions. I know I always have that annual one. I'm sure we all do. I'm going to lose weight this next calendar year, and it's not specific. It doesn't have all of that framework. Making sure it's measurable. So if you're looking at saving up for something, how can we actually say that's our specific goal? Now, how much is it? How many? And what am I going to know? Well, how can I measure that I've actually achieved that? I need to save $5,000 so that I can achieve this. And is it then a goal that is achievable? How would it be achievable? If I need to save $5,000, and I'll talk a bit later on your budget, what does that mean that you're going to need to actually put aside? And is that possible in your budget? And then making sure, that is it actually relevant? What's the relevance of and realistics? Is it relevant, realistic to you that you actually can then go out on achieve that as well? And then what's the time frame around it? Set yourself a time. I always like to have a 1-year goal, 3-year goal, and 5-year goal. And when I have the 1-year goal, wind that back and say, well, okay, that's in 1 year's time. What do I need to do today? What do I need to do by 3 months' time, 6 months' time to then be able to achieve that as well? Now, one tool that I find really useful, and many people may have done it you might have done it in your work, in your business, but very rarely do people look at it and do it in their personal life. And I've had many a financial planning session where I give a nice big piece of butcher paper to a client and say, let's mind map what some of these goals are. And they're like, oh, but how does that relate to, how does this relate to your financial? Everything I find in life, what you've got as personal goals, there's often a financial element that's going to help you get there, whether it means a financial element that has to be financially to be able to get to the goal. Then there's a financial payment that's required to be able to get that, buy that caravan, buy the pool, all of that. or whether that's just going to be an enabler as well. But looking at a mind map and really saying, okay, what is it that I need to action? So maybe when we're looking at, if I use an example on it, you know, we might have, and I'll just put one here, family might be at the center point. Okay, I have the home. What do I want in my house? I've got, you know, maybe I've got credit card debt. Maybe I've got my home loan. What's a time frame around my home loan that I want to pay? So when I'm looking at mind mapping, I find it's a really good way of taking what was a really big project or challenge and breaking it down into small actionable items. So looking at buying a pool, so doing a pool renovation. The pools these days, I don't think there's any change outside of $150,000 for a new pool these days. I've actually seen some $300,000-400,000. Okay, so what do we need if we are to achieve that? What do we need to do to be able to achieve that? Is it something that we need to look at? Is it borrowing against your mortgage, or is that something of saving a certain amount deposit and then borrowing them more? But breaking that down into what's the time frame around the pool. I've often looked at this with clients where they would like to maybe get this renovation for the pool, and saying, okay, well, if we did that, it would take us X number of years to save it up. Maybe if we saved up a certain amount and borrowed the rest. And so being able to financially quantify that and give them that calculation of, well, if you borrowed for the buying the pool to install the pool, and you got to use the pool earlier than you had anticipated, than saving up and waiting and doing it once you've got that finished. But being able to understand what's the overall goal, what's the, you know, often there might not be always the tax implication, what's the financial outcome of what you're looking at doing with your goals, and what's the personal outcome as well. If getting that extra mortgage was to cause you stress, then that's not, so whilst it may be something that we can get the financial side of it sorted, but it's going to cause you stress, and therefore you wouldn't get to enjoy that goal, so to speak, that may be something that we really look at. But using mind maps, and you can use it with your own personal goals, health goals, renovation plans, being able to just put that circle and say, well, that's the goal. I want the pool. What do I need with the pool? Another line will be, well, I need money. Where do I get that money? Is it lent? Is it borrowed? Is it saved? So being able to have a look at that so that you can break it down into kind of actionable steps that enable you to be able to do that. And I find doing that with your personal goals, you know, it might be that you want to study a bit more. It might be looking at retirement. I've got, you know, is it 10 years till retirement, 20 years till retirement? What do I actually want to retire on? And I look at that with retirement and say, well, actually, if I want to retire on a certain amount in, say, 20 years' time, what does that mean I need to be doing over the next 20 years to be able to achieve that goal? And so that might even be looking at in investment. So that's where looking at the mind mapping can really help you to kind of frame out some of those goals. But as I mentioned earlier, often a lot of these goals, unfortunately, not everything is for free, which we would like, but not everything is there. And there's a financial element as well. So going back to then having a look at how do we go about then budgeting for some of these goals? And if you don't know where to start, you may not love, let's just say you don't love numbers as much as we love numbers. You know, I love numbers so much that I went and studied numbers and became an accountant and financial advisor. But a lot of my clients are really fantastic at what they do, and they cannot stand numbers. Now, I always say to my clients, I know that you're never going to love accounting as much as I do, but I do need you to learn a bit about the financial side of it to really kind of empower you more to understand more of your finances, and you might just a little bit slightly enjoy it. Maybe not as much as I do, but you might a little bit start to enjoy it. So what does that mean when it comes to looking at a budget? Now, a few people might already cringe because sometimes my clients do cringe when we talk about it, but it can be quite empowering when you've gone through that process. One thing to really think about, and I love this quote, but really remember, a budget is telling your money where to go instead of actually wondering where it went. When you do your tax return at the end of the year, that's after the fact. It's happened, it's gone. A budget is telling you your money where it is to go and to try and set those goals. So what is a personal budget? So really looking at a financial plan that allocates your personal income towards expenses, savings, and debt repayment. So going back to when I talked about the goals, if one of your goals was to buy that caravan or was to buy something, invest in an investment property, what is it that you need to do today? Going back to your mind map, what do I need to do? What tasks do I need to undertake to be able to actually achieve that? And what is that going to mean from a financial perspective? All of a sudden, I think it was Tim Gurner was the famous one to say that, what was it, kids these days need to stop having, was it $5 coffees and smashed avocado?
Smashed avocado,
like
yeah.
Smashed avocado,
yeah.
Yes. Maybe it's cutting that, or how can you balance it? And it's actually quite interesting that often when clients say to us, oh, I don't spend that much. I live quite a, probably quite a conservative life. And then we get them to fill out, just let us know what is your personal expenses that you have on a monthly, weekly basis. That gives us an understanding as an advisor. I want to understand what your outgoings are on a personal level. I've done that for years with clients on their business, but when I'm doing it with personal, I want to understand the outgoings, what's the incoming, so I can actually work out what potentially surplus funds are. Often when I get that surplus funds and I say, oh, that's great, you've got X amount surplus funds every month or every year, most of them say, no, I don't. I actually never have any surplus funds, or I've put this. So trying to drill down as to what that budget is and where the funds are going and tracking it. So firstly, it's a personal budget, very different from a budget you might create for your business. It's not just something you create and then kind of put in the bottom drawer. It's something to give you a framework, especially if you've got a goal in mind, whether it be a financial goal or a lifestyle goal, which might be going on that holiday. And it is forward facing. Often I say doing a budget for 12 months. It doesn't have to be anything formal or anything like that. We do have a template that I can send you out after this, but really trying to allocate, here's our income, and the income could be a known amount because you're employed or you know approximately what your business income is going to be. And then what are your expenses? Now, some of those expenses, unfortunately, we don't have any negotiation on. We can't reduce those expenses, but some of them you do have the ability to look at those. So what are some of the benefits of a personal budget? It actually really gives you, it feels really good. Actually, a lot of clients love the fact that it starts to give you control. A lot of people do find that, they're at the, when they're not focusing on it, you start to get a bit more control. You get more focused on your money goals. Once you start saving up for certain aspects, it creates awareness of where the money goes. You may not have even realized where some of those funds were going, and really start building some better money habits. It's amazing the difference that a few extra dollars onto your loan, a home loan, the difference that can make over a longer period of time. I recommend always a lot of clients when they're looking at it, their home loan, if the interest rates, and I suspect interest rates are going to go the other way at the moment, they're going to probably start going up. When interest rates were going down, I was saying to all of my clients, if you've got that cash flow there to be able to do it, why not keep paying the same amount onto your home loan? You've been paying it for a while now. Why reduce it unnecessarily? It fits in with your budget, that we've budgeted that amount, and the difference that can make from a compounding impact over the life of the loan is significant. And it really will start to get you, when you have that budget in place, start to get you to achieve those wealth goals. Going through and working with clients to buy their first investment property or even their first home loan, but also their first investment property, equity starts to build up, then they look at buying the other ones. It does act as an early, warning system. We had one recently, a client had a change of circumstances and having to relook at their budget, with what was a very high net worth individual, high net income. And now the income has dropped quite significantly, and looking at, well, what can we do to work with them to actually help them adjust to what is going to be a new income for their family as opposed to what they'd had in the past. And it does become a bit of a communication tool. It will provide you with more money if you stick to it. And ultimately, it does lead to you having a better life. I know that working with clients that have put the budget together, they're just so much more on top of their money and feel a lot more in control of their financial situation. And a lot of them have never actually had that control before. And the number of comments that we've received over time from clients with the control of feeling good about it. You know, why do most people avoid doing a budget? They don't like numbers or love numbers as much as we do. I understand that. Often it's extra work to set it up, maybe to set it up and monitor it. Look, you don't have to do anything fancy on it. We do have some frameworks, but you know, a lot of people think, yeah, they hear the word budget and think, oh, bread and water, that's what I'm going to live off, 2-minute noodles. It's not always about that. Maybe they don't know how to prepare one, or the fear of putting the subject of money on the table and having that discussion. A fear of what they'll find out. Actually, a lot of people find out things like they have a shoe addiction. There's many different things that we do find out. And sometimes people say, I don't need one, or just laziness. But it is something, no matter how fancy it is or not fancy, it is really something to have a look at and try and identify opportunities as to where you might be able to save some funds as well, and what you're spending. I tend to find I look at, you know, whether it be looking at my home loan and home insurance, you know, every year or two, whether it's your electricity, looking at some of those and seeing, well, what are some of those? Am I getting the best situation for those, and where could I be saving some of those? You know, about 2 and a bit years ago, I actually, of course, I got out my numbers and crunched my spreadsheet modeling, but put solar in on our house. And so by putting solar in, yes, it was a cash outlay at that point. Now with the cash outlay, is it a cash outlay? Do you put that on your home loan as some extra? What's the financial outcome going to be? But our electricity bill now is so low, it's just crazy. I actually did it on the office as well, and our electricity bill in the office is usually negative by $100 every quarter, and it used to be $1,500 a quarter in the office. So significant difference. The repay was very quick. So it's some of those types of costs where you look at, well, what's that investment, but what's the return as well, that you can kind of look up. So how do I go about setting up a budget? So looking at the components of a personal budget, what's your income? What's all your income that you potentially get? Maybe you've got an investment property. Do you have other investments? What are your expenses? To go through the different aspects of what is it that you have, what I call fixed costs, whether it be your home mortgage or your rent, you know, insurances. What are some of those fixed costs that you need to have? What's your average monthly, maybe grocery spend? And what are areas that you can actually have a look? Potentially some monthly monitoring as well, you know, having that estimate and seeing if you track to a budget. Are you on track? Are your expenses higher than your income? And if so, what are some of those areas? And then the potential to reset or adjust. So again, going back to the 3 buckets, we don't want to have a situation where you've got the income generating asset feeding today and you don't spend any money today because you're so focused on the budget and so focused on investment for the future that you forget to live today. So it is that balancing act that I was talking about before, and making sure that you have all of the facts to kind of make an informed decision when it comes to looking at that. We can send you out after this webinar. It's just a personal budget template, gives you a bit of an idea. You can plug in some numbers. I've just played with some numbers on this one, but really just to have a look, you know, select the year that you want to use. And have a look at some of the expenses and click in the drop down boxes to kind of say, well, where is the income coming in and where is the outgoings, and what is potentially your net annual cash surplus? One interesting thing about the annual cash surplus, a lot of people go through all of their expenses and then put the balance into savings. Now, I tried, and I've always done this for a very long time. I think my parents must have taught me, and my parents are not financially educated either. They're in the trades, but I guess the way I've always looked at it is to put the money that I want to put in savings the minute it was paid to me. So the minute I got my wage, I would set aside what my budget said my monthly savings was going to be. I'd take that money out of my day-to-day bank account, put that in another bank account, and then just focus on living with that money that was in my day-to-day bank account. So out of sight, out of mind, rather than looking at the end of each month, I will put my savings into a savings account. I do it first. Now, look, obviously, if something happened, hot water service blows up, whatever that is, you might have to take that out. But trying to change the way in which you look at your investments and your savings and making it a priority for you to be able to kind of look at putting that money aside and being able to put that there. So going back to, I guess, looking at your goals, going back to, well, what are the goals that you're trying to achieve? Look at the mind mapping, and look, the mind mapping for me is something that helps you kind of take what was this huge goal and kind of break it down into what are the aspects that I need to manage and deal with, and how am I then going to deal with each of those different areas, and how does that have a financial impact that I might need from the goals perspective. How we can help if you need from a financial advisor perspective. You know, all of us think life moves in a straight line. Unfortunately, it doesn't. Now, if you have a budget in place, and, you know, you might have that budget, but the hot water service blows up, that's going to change potentially your path to getting across to your financial goal first. And so looking at it, working with an advisor is when we can, I actually think that the journey, the financial advice journey, is actually a lot of loops. And I do kind of have a kind of a saying about it is, I don't know how any on the call today have renovated your kitchen. No doubt you've renovated your kitchen. You've had an extensive plan in place of how you were going to do it, and, you know, what it was going to cost you and how all of those. But how many people have actually done that with your financial position yourself and looking at your overall? So the kitchen renovation may be one part of your mind map. That's the kitchen renovation. But how have you done that in overall? But going through that process is going to give you a bit more confidence over your financial position, and being able to proceed forward with achieving some of those financial goals. So I'll open it up to questions and just to go back, I guess, looking at and reiterate on your financial goals is going back and remembering some of the comments, and we'll send the slides out, but have a think about what are your three buckets. What's your income generating bucket that you have? What is your today? So what are some of the things that you need today, which will be partly on your cash flow budget that you've got. It'll be some of your mortgage expenses. You know, young kids, you might want to do the Disneyland thing now that we can actually travel. You might have some of those goals today. But don't forget about your long-term goal. What are you doing with your super? Where is your super at? Knowing you can't access it until 60, how are you going to do something with super? And I will cover this in a lot more detail in a month or so with one of our next series, but I will go through the super side of it as well. But being able to balance with those three buckets, and when you're spending money, think, well, I've received this money, I've got my business income, I've got my income that I'm going to earning for my wage. Where am I doing that from a today perspective, or is it there tomorrow? And making that kind of informed decision on that side as well. So I'm just looking now, we've got open up for questions. So I do have a question. Would you suggest any surplus funds paying yourself first, or should you go into your mortgage offset or a different account? That's a really good question. That'll come back to what your overall goals are, but a mortgage offset account is a fantastic thing. So when I talked about savings before, potentially you may have your savings account may actually be your offset account. It may be your offset account because that's going to reduce the amount of loan repayments or interest income that interest expense that you're going to have to pay. So putting the money there as your savings, but knowing that you've got it there, that you might be potentially using that to save up for something else, whether it be that pool renovation, but putting it in a spot where you're actually making some loan repayment savings.
Also, Shannon, there was another one just in the chat about good apps for budgeting.
Yeah, so there are actually, we'll send you out our little quick budgeting. I've just got a little summary Excel one. The Money Smart website actually has a really good budget tool as well. A really good budget tool on that one as well.
Mm-hmm. And then after filling in the budget, then what's the next steps?
Yeah, so filling the budget of where are your expenses now, what are you spending, and is all of that expenditure necessary? What flexibility do you have, and is there a buffer? Now, if you're saving for that pool and you've worked backwards to say this is how much extra I'm going to need, what does that actually mean that you've actually got left over from that surplus? And is there an opportunity for you to be able to save on different areas? Is it, you know, I mean, a lot of people actually, it was interesting during COVID that a lot of people did save, those who were still being able to work from home, did save as a result of not going out as much. Now, that comes down to we weren't able to go out, but now we are. How do you balance that, that being able to go out while still saving as well? There's another question as well. What is the way to unpack all of your current expenses? I agree, bank statements are a good one, is being able to actually track. And that's when we had a client, the clients that go through and actually list all of their income and expenses, and it seems to not correlate well with what's actually gone out of their bank statement. So you may actually go and have a look on a monthly basis, maybe the last 3 months, to give yourself a tracking to go, well, what is my average expense? Some of them, going through the budget tool, there is, you know, all the different expenses. You can then look up, well, what is my shire rates once a year? What are my water rates every 3 months? But have a look through your bank statements. You may actually have cash, I guess, when you've withdrawn cash, and that may be allocated to certain other expenses. But yeah, the comment, there's someone put a comment there about saving receipts. That maybe you may want to monitor yourself for a month where you think, oh, every week I take out X amount in cash, and then all of a sudden there's not, what am I spending all of that money on? It'd be your bank statements and credit card statements. Interesting with post-COVID, it's actually been quite a good way for budgeting now, because a lot of our expenses we're all using, whether it be credit card, we're not using cash as much as we used to do. And what you can actually do with that on your bank, go into your bank account and get your bank statement and credit card. You can actually export, and if you have a look on your bank, export the transactions, and it'll come out as a CSV file, that you can convert that to an Excel file and then go through and sort it. So look, it is going to take you a little bit of work up front, but it might really give you a good, what have I been doing over the last 3 months? Is the last 3 months reflective of what I might be actually spending, and where are some opportunities that I potentially could save money, could spend the money differently? Why is it that every time you think you've got a surplus and then you look in the bank account, there's nothing there? And, you know, we've had some really, I guess, some great success. I'm thinking of a few different clients where they felt like they never had any money, and even using that whole focus point of taking out what they wanted to save and putting it in another bank account, or the offset account if you've got that home loan, being able to put it in there, take it out, because what they found is every time they had money in their bank account, they spent it. It actually was gone as well. But I think it really comes down with a lot of this, and we just got a question or comment on the goals. Yes, on your goals, it is really about going on to what are your personal goals? And we talk about today financial goals, but a lot of your personal goals will have an element of the financial side of it, whether that be because of a time, being able to earn enough that enables you to have that time to be able to achieve that personal goal, or whether you need the financial backing to be able to achieve that particular goal. So it's really important to kind of have a look at what is it that I'm doing, because sometimes, especially during the COVID period, many of us, those that are working from home, felt like we got on that mouse wheel that just kept going and going. And it is important to have those goals and see what you can achieve. And thinking back to my example on the caravan, being able to make an informed decision as to whether you actually want to buy that caravan, have a slightly increased mortgage, but it satisfies other personal goals that you have within the family and within the household.
Shannon, do you have any suggestions for investment apps, the ones that round up what you spend and then pop it in your savings, things like that?
Actually, that one I haven't actually used those investment apps. I don't know. I have heard of them and I just haven't actually done that. But I actually think that, especially the younger generation, that's a really, really good one for the younger generation to be able to, I've heard a lot of in the low 20s, it's a really good one to just be able to take that extra few dollars, but I actually haven't used them myself.
How do you balance out for the today and tomorrow buckets?
That's a really good question. Ultimately, when we're working with clients on that, the client's going to be the one that ultimately has to make that decision. But what you want to have is good financial good financial understanding. So the budget's going to help you with that. but also having the information to be able to enable you to make an informed decision. So that's where sometimes we will, when we're financially modeling those outcomes, we will actually have a look at, in that client situation with the caravan, they really could not justify at all spending that money today. Their whole goal was to pay off that mortgage. And so being able to financially model it and show them where they would be then in the long run, it gave them, I guess, the ability to be really comfortable with the decision of buying the caravan, having the extra loan. So there are going to be times where you might not even look at the future bucket because you're very focused on the today bucket, but never lose sight of it, you know, and especially when you've got a younger family, you've got more on that side as well. But you need to be constantly looking at the future bucket, because you don't want to be that situation that gets so close to retirement. And let's face it, none of us want to retire on the age pension if possible, because $22,000 doesn't really get you too far. You know, even if you own your own home, it really doesn't get you too far on that point. So it is a balancing act, and then also balancing it between the tax outcomes, financial outcomes, and the goals. So I'm very much, when I'm working with clients, if there's, you know, something might be a bad tax outcome to do something, or a bad financial outcome per se, like buying the caravan, that's, you know, financially that costs them more, but ultimately it satisfies the goal. So it's being able to being able to make an informed decision, I guess, on it.
Do we have any other questions? Does anyone have any other questions?
No. So
just
the
put them in the Q&A box.
Yeah, feel free to put that in, or shoot us an email afterwards. The next sessions that I was going to go through, rebuilding after divorce. I've actually seen this quite a bit over the last probably 2 years or so. There are some really big tax implications around this as well, especially around the separation of the assets. But really what I want to focus on, I do have a webinar on that that we have done previously. So you will find that on our YouTube channel to talk about those aspects. But what I want to talk about in this next session is really, how do you, in a sense, rebuild? I have a number of people that come to me and say, I've never actually been responsible with the finances. I've never been involved. And what do I do? And so I've pulled from those experiences with those clients to kind of pull together a summary on that. My absolute favorite, I love super. I love everything you can do with superannuation. It is literally, I think, the greatest gift that the government has given us from a tax perspective, being able to put aside for your future, but the investment opportunity. But how can you look at really supercharging your super? And not only that, I want everyone to walk away from that one actually starting to pay attention to your super, because ultimately it may be ending up being one of your biggest assets that you have. I have a number of people that have ended up with significant super balances and have not looked at it for such a long time, yet that if that money was in their bank account, they would have been looking at it. The fees that sometimes you might be charged on the super can be significant. So it's really one of those that you do need to make sure that you're paying attention. And there are some really, really great strategies on that. So I really want to talk about ways that you can supercharge your super. I actually had the Minister for Financial Planning and Superannuation, Jane Hume, at our office a few weeks ago. And for International Women's Day, she was here. There was only 10 of us, and we had a discussion. And the one thing that the government was struggling with, and I guess it was kind of one of these open forums with International Women's Day, is that women have the lowest super balances, significantly lower to that of men, often because of the time we've left the workforce to have children. Obviously, the pay difference that has been over the time as well. So how can we really look at using some strategies that actually have a great tax outcome, potentially great also then financial outcome, and hopefully you satisfy your goals for retirement as well. So that one's going to be a really great session. I always love talking about super, so you'll get that. And then planning for a rich future, looking at some of the investment side of things, and then also the financing side of things, so that you can really say, okay, now what do we do when we're looking at that? I guess you could say that tomorrow, whether it's inside or outside of super, but what can we do tomorrow as well? But if there's any questions that you have on any of those topics that you want to shoot through to us in advance, because I can incorporate some of those into our slides as well. Kind of all of this has been just built around what clients have told me they want or what people want to know. So I'm happy to kind of incorporate those in as well. So I can say, I reckon our YouTube channel is better than Netflix. You can have a look. One of our videos has actually had 31,000 views. My son was, you know, the tech savvy son, the 17-year-old was like, what? That's crazy, mum. You should be totally getting paid for that now. So he was trying to get into my YouTube. Apparently you have to change something. He said, we'll change the settings. So from now on, you guys should be getting paid money because it's 31,000 views. But we do have a lot of different things. Every time I get a client asking a question, how safe is my super? And then I create a video on how safe is my super. So you'll find that on there. If you're looking at investing, you know, is an SMSF right for you? Should you be looking at doing an SMSF, a self-managed super fund? There's a video on that. If you love investing in property, I've got one on investing in property through your super. I like to call it how to feed your property addiction with your super, because it is quite addictive. But there are investing in property, difference between commercial property, residential. So there's a heap on our YouTube channel. And if you've got any questions, let me know, and then I'll probably create a video on it as well. So feel free to get in touch with any of us if you've got any questions. And thanks so much for joining today. And we'll see you in about a month's time.
Thank you,
Thanks
everyone.
very much. Thank you.